Hi and welcome to another tutorial on Adobe Photoshop CS3. Today we'll be learning about basic shapes and a little bit of the graphical interface of Photoshop CS5. Well, this is Photoshop and right now we are looking at your customized workspace areas. You can have some pre-default customized work areas, or you can just create your own. I created by my own name, by the name of Mudassir. You can just click and create your own customized work area, name it test, and add keyboards, shortcuts and menus if you want to. I prefer to do that, so save, and another shortcut, another workspace has been created. Now these are all the tabs and extra palettes, color palettes and other things that are available in Photoshop. You can go to the Windows menu and access them, or you can go to the right side of Photoshop and all these few predefined tabs are already open, which are grouped together in tab groups. You can remove all the tabs that you want from your tab group, or you can remove the tab group as altogether. Also, you can have the option of resetting the test to come back to the original state in which you saved your workspace. Also, you can come back and delete a workspace. Let's say we want to delete the test workspace. So right now it's enabled, so it won't be deleted. So let's select another workspace and now select the test workspace that we want to delete. Click delete and yes. Now I'm going to fine tune the Mudassir, my personal workspace, and I want to I'll remove some tab groups and tabs. Just select, and there's a small symbol on the right side. Just click on it and a pop-up menu appears, and then you can just delete, or you can say close group, or close the tab that you want. So this is looking fairly nicely decent, and now I'm going to show you that on the left side is the tools palette. It has different tools for drawing, moving, manipulation, color picking, painting, buckets, etc. And we will come to all these tools in further coming lectures. So now my Mudassir tool workspace is already set as the way I want it to be. I haven't resetted it and I haven't done anything to it. All the previous settings are already enabled, and all the tab groups that I deleted are already there, deleted. I'm going to file and select a new file, and I can create my own customized presets as well. Let's say that I want to create another preset. So I'll pick 15 millimeter, and before that I'll select grayscale, 8-bit color, and probably 300 to 1. I'll change it to 150 dpi. DPI is short for pixel resolution. So I'm going to save it, and it gives you a predefined value of what you can save it, and I add in 150p and I click OK. So now this customized preset has been created and it is appearing in my custom preset area. I can select custom preset and I can see that the size of the file is 7.74 kilobytes, and this is what the file will be initially before you actually start working on it. You can also change the color types, the background color, the color mode, etc., or you can just go to another setting. I prefer to work in international paper sizes, and I have it has a huge variety of different variations. You can also create your own customized paper sizes, but I go for A3 size when I go make my drawings. checking to see the settings, and it looks alright. The size is 49.9 MB, and click OK. Now I am not very much satisfied with this background white color, and so I create another layer and I change the background layer color to something of a darker tone. So let's do that. And right now my PC is gone a bit stalled, so I paused it and played it back again. So okay, so we can zoom in our work area, zoom out using the Z key. Pressing the Z key and pressing the spacebar key helps us pan in our work area. You can also use the H key for the hand tool to pan, and I'm just going to remove this icon by clicking on it, and I'm going to rename this locked layer into a background layer, and I'm going to fill it with blue. But still this blue looks to be very bright. Zooming out to see what it looks like overall, and I'm still not satisfied with it, so I go to image. Probably I might choose some lighter color from the color picker. Let me just see what color I want. Somewhere around here. Okay, so first I'll apply this color tone, and if I don't like it, then I can obviously change it using the bucket tool, or I can just change it using the hue saturation values that I'm going to show you right now. And this looks okay. Slightly changing the saturation value on this. Go to image, settings, color settings, and hue saturation. Shortcut is Control U. Now it looks like that this seems to be fine. You can also lock your layers depending on how you want to lock it fully. You want to lock the movement of it, you want to lock the pixel information, or you want to lock so that it doesn't paint on this layer. So I locked it fully, and now I'm going to start using the brush tool, and I'm going to show you the basic 5 shapes in nature. These 5 shapes exist everywhere. The first is the circle. Let's change the color to black and let's draw. Okay, so the flow of my brush seems to be very thick. So I go to brush settings and I click on shape dynamics so that it gives me a pinched look. Right now it's very free flowing and it looks like a marker. I want it to look like a pen stroke, so I use the erase key and I erase all the information out there that I drew on this second layer. And now I'm going to show you that how you can edit your stroke styling. So as I click on the shape dynamics checkbox, it gives you more of a stylized approach, and the more pressure you apply on the tablet pen, the more thick the lines go, the less pressure, the more thin the line goes. So now I'm going to draw a circle. I try to first start by moving over the line, and first let's draw the line. So line is a bit easy. Then we can draw the second shape is the arc. These two shapes exist in nature and they are the building blocks for all complex shapes. Let's say we add in some more shapes, like let's say if you want to draw a circle or a triangle or a square, they are also basic shapes. Okay, so now I'm drawn 3 points and I want to move my hand steadily, and then after 3-4 movement tries I actually draw the line. And as you can see, my computer is a bit stalling, so the lines are not perfect. Let's try it again. Point 1, point 2. So I'm going to draw an arc around these 3 points, and here you go. So this looks like a okay arc. The first ones look so. The third basic shape that exists in nature is a square. Having a little bit trouble with the line here, and fixed it using the erase key to erase the overlapping lines, and it looks like a so square. Again, I can improve the overall dimensions by just fine-tuning the line. So this looks like a perfect square or a semi-perfect square. Now we are going to work on the triangle. So drawing a triangle is a bit tricky, but there is a very easy step. You can just draw 3 points and move your hand on this 2 points, or you can just click and shift click on the other points, and a triangle, a perfectly or a slightly semi-perfect triangle is created. This is another trick in Photoshop. If you want to draw a straight line at any angle, just click and then shift click on another point and the line will be created. So this comes in handy for drawing complex shapes at times. Now I'm showing you how to click, shift, click, the technique of drawing lines in straight lines in Photoshop at any angle. Okay, so the last shape that we are going to draw, the fifth basic shape in nature, is a circle. So like there are many ways that you can draw a circle. I mean, there is a novice method and a proper artist method of drawing a circle. First you move your hand over the work area and then you just draw the circle. So now this circle looks like an artistically drawn circle, though still it doesn't look like a perfect circle. But this is the right way of drawing a circle. Most students, or most art students especially, what they do is that they start drawing these small dotted lines, and then they, after a small while, join them together. So a proper circle that I made before takes like 4 to 5 seconds, while this technique of using dotted lines to draw a circle takes like forever, or you can say just takes about around 1 minute. But still, this is a very terribly bad practice that most kids or beginner artists use for drawing their shapes. And this does not only apply for only circles. I mean, they do this for everything. They keep on drawing lines, small lines. They're not very prominent with drawing straight and free-flowing lines. And this is normally what I try to tell my kids in my classes, that they should do more often. They should not follow this second method, they should follow the first one. So this is all about the basic shapes. Now I'm going to try to explore some of the a drawing tool called the vector drawing tool, and let's take the example of this arc that we have drawn with these 3 points. So these points, if you draw tangents to these points, they are called anchor, and they are at 90 degrees to the arc or the flow of the arc. And in every software, CorelDRAW, Photoshop, Illustrator, or any other graphics software, it's called anchor points. And normally people don't like to switch from one software platform to another just because these terminologies are different. But if you get your basic knowledge or basic understanding about where these terminologies came from, then you can use any kind of software. And believe me, I personally use more than one software. So I've chosen the path shape and I create another layer. So I click on the first point, click and drag on the second point, and it draws an anchor. Now this matches the direction and the flow of the arc, and anchors can always be edited later on. So now I'm drawing the third anchor point, and the third anchor point doesn't seem to be falling in the exact curvature of the arc, so I'm going to have to edit these points. I might as well create another point, the fourth point. This is where the arc is ending, and now I'm going to start editing the points. I can use the direct selection tool and the path selection tool to edit tangent points. I'm using the path selection tool, and it comes about to fairly matching how the both two arcs look like. So I try to match it to one side and the other side gets disturbed, and it takes some time to tweak it over, tweak the other corresponding point anchors to make it come to about what you want it to come to. You can also add in anchor points by selecting convert to anchor point, and it has a shape like a tweezer. So now I can reduce this arc, and now this looks relatively similar to the arc that I created by hand. Now this is on layer 1, and on layer 2 you can see that this arc is matching the curvature of the arc that I drew. You can turn off the drawing layer 1 to see how it looks like. Turning the layer 1 on and off, and now I think it looks satisfying enough, like the arc that I drew by hand. So now I want to actually use this second layer and use this vector path that I created and create a stroke outline, or make a line that follows this vector shape. So I can just select the work path, turn it to path 1 and select it and see if I can turn it. Select this path. I can go and stroke it from here, create a stroke from here, or I can just select stroke path. It will give you a few options, brush and other options. You can just select brush tool. If you stimulate pressure, it will create a very bland and very sorry about that, very regular looking vector shape or a vector arc. Still it's been rasterized because it's in a raster layer, and we'll come to the concept of raster layers and vector layers later on. So we can create vector shapes also using the vector shape option instead of using the path option. But right now I'm just showing you that you can create vector shapes and vector objects using raster shapes and raster objects using vector shapes as well. So now this is pinched layer, and I actually selected the stimulate pressure option on, and this created this pinching arc effect. Move these two effects all together. Maybe I might move them upwards. Move the first layer 1 down, and move the second layer arc layers upwards. So this is how it looks like, how these two arc shapes look like. So there are 2 layers. You can also auto select these 2 layers by clicking and dragging, but you need to have the auto select sub option checked on. If you checked it off, then you cannot select them. Now save the file on your desktop, give it some name and save it as a Photoshop PSD file. Click save. Now this file is saved. You can also save your files right after you've created them. Sometimes it so happens that the lights go out, or your computer gets disconnected, or laptop gets out of juice. So it's always good to save your work after 5 to 6 minute intervals, so that you keep your work up to date. You don't have to save it right at the end of it. So now I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to try to make a circular shape, and I'm going to add depth to it. And the way we can add depth to a 2D object is by shading it and adding shadows to it. But to create shadows, you must have to have a light source from which light falls on that object. So I'm creating a straight line or a horizontal line, and I'm going to draw a circle. Now notice that my circle drawing is pretty much out of order. So I can do is I can just fix my circular drawing and then use the eraser tool to fix all my errors. Now I'm using the eraser tool. Make sure that you guys get that this is just as a reference, that how my circle should look like, how big my circular object should look like, and how it should be on a flat surface, how it should be placed on a flat surface. I can always scale it upwards or downwards depending on how I want it to be placed. So I'm scaling it vertically so that it looks like a circular ball. I've not thought about what it should look like. I mean, it can be a tennis ball, a snooker ball, a pool ball, anything. I think a pool ball would look nice, a red pool ball. I'm drawn a point, and this is going to be the light source. So the light is actually following in from that light source in straight line. I move my object so that I can calculate just using the shift click key to actually calculate where my shadows are going to be formed. So now what I can do is I can create a shadow based on the information that I've been given from a light source, and the shadow is fairly in an elliptical form. And so now I'm going to draw an ellipse that intersects the base and the I'm going to now I named this light source, or LS. This is the primary light source, and the ellipse that makes the shadow is going to be intersecting the base line and the two edges of the light source. So let's move our mouse first so that we get an impression of the ellipse, and now let's draw the ellipse. Make sure that your ellipses are not pinched from the edges, and they are smooth, circular from the edges. Most students also make this very terrible mistake of making ellipses that are pinched off from the edges, and they should not be pinched off, they should be circular from the edges. So now, as a reference, I drew an ellipse fairly equivalent, and still it does look like slightly pinched, but it is not. It leaves some portion of the area. So this is how the ball is creating or forming a shadow at the base. So now I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to fill this layer with the shadow information of the object. So this area is basically the area where the shadow is being formed, and it can be a very hard shadow depending on the strength of the light source, or it can be a very smooth shadow depending on the strength. Fixing my outlines. So now I'm going to create another layer. But before I create another layer, I use the magic wand key and select the inner area where the shadow is being casted, and I clean the marquee selection from irregular cuts so that it's slightly smooth. I use the lasso tool, shortcut is L, create another layer, then I add a black fill to it. So now I'm going to go to the filter menu and use the Gaussian blur tool to see if it can form smooth shadows or it should form a very hard shadow. So right now it looks like it's Gaussian blur doesn't seem to be working. Let's try some other options, or we can come back to Gaussian blur again if we don't find some other blurring options. Okay, so at the base edge of the circle there seems to be some blurring, and I don't want blurring over there. So how can I fix this? Let me check some other blur option. Lens blur, no. Gaussian blur, no. Okay, so what if I add some color to the back side, the ellipse area that I deleted? Okay, let's try Gaussian blur one more time. Okay, so it looks fairly decent now, and that area that is at the back of the circle is going to be hidden by the fill or the color that we are going to add into the circle, so we don't have to worry about the back side, how smooth or how blurry it looks. Come back to layer 3 and check to see that we've drawn the circle and the shadows on the proper layers. Turn the shadow layer off and let's turn to our layer 3 and start coloring it. Use the airbrushing technique, hardness to brush hardness to 0 so that it looks like a smooth airbrush, and the opacity I turn it down to 20%, and I then start applying a color tone to the shape, circular shape. Apply a color tone, first color tone wash, and then I gradually slowly add in more color. There are two techniques of adding color. You can go from light to dark, or you can go from dark to light. So you can go from a very light red color to a dark red color tone or a brownish color tone, or you can go vice versa from a brownish color tone to a dark red color tone. The choice is all up to you. Normally it depends from person to person and artist to artist, and sometimes the clients also. I remember there was a Batman series, animated series in the 90s, the very first Batman animated series. They actually drew all their animation on a black paper instead of traditional white paper or traditional white animation paper. They used black paper and they drew their drawings, and from dark to bright, they started working from dark to light. So it was a very the output or the outcome of that animated series came to be very promising, and I think that Batman episode or the Batman series is still considered to be one of the best Batman series that was ever created up till now. And again, my PC seems to be stalling and it's slowing down, so I give it a few seconds, catch up, and again it's causing me problems, so give it a few more minutes, and I guess now it's working fine. Yep. Okay, so now it's slightly coming to the shape that a circular ball should look like, with the shadows, highlights, but we can still work around with it and we can still make it look more detailed. So let's start adding more tone or color to our object, and try to add some specular highlights. I'm just trying to pick and choose where the specular highlights are coming from, and this looks a bit too much, this looks okay. So I'm adding in color, smoothing it out, adding some more highlights. So now this looks like a circular sphere, or you can also call it a bowling ball if you're going too big, or let's keep it a pool ball. Okay, so now I'm picking colors from in between these two color tones, and to pick colors from your work area, you just press the Alt key and then select the color area that you want to picking color, and still I'm using opacity at 20% so that it comes to a smoother transition. Now it looks fairly coming close to a circular sphere, adding more detail, more work, and now I'm going from dark to light, or you can say from up to down. You can go from down to up, meaning light to dark, or vice versa. It just depends on the way you're working. Sometimes people go from one way to the other quite instantly and they don't realize it. So now it looks like a very blurred out circular sphere. Spheres are normally very sharp edged. So how can we fix this problem? We'll come to that in a few minutes. Just let me add in more detail, add in more shadows. Now I'm going to add in some more shadows over there on the top, make it a bit more darker. Now I'm going to add more shadows, pick a darker tone of brown, go down over here, add more color information. Again, PC seems to be stalling, but it's alright. Okay, so here I add more shadows, change the color values, go down darker more, and go to 50 as opacity. No, 50 doesn't seem right. Go back to 20 again, and now it looks like a proper spherical ball, but still it looks nowhere near like a spherical ball because the paint seems to have blended out from our reference area that we drew, the outline that we drew. So we can come over and fix that anytime, and I guess it's coming close to that time where we can get it fixed. So we select the circular marquee tool and create a circular marquee using pressing the shift and the space key to move it as appropriately proportionate to where we wanted it to be. And now this is a circular marquee tools, and we have the key pressed. As soon as we mouse button pressed, as soon as we release it, its marquee is created, and then we go to select and inverse the selection so that the outward area is selected, and then we delete. Press delete key or the backspace key and it deletes. Now this looks like a perfect sphere. We move the layer 4 down and this looks like proper sphere like object. So I guess you now know how to draw a perfectly looking or a slightly perfectly looking, artistically looking sphere in Photoshop, and how to use the brush tool and what are the sub options. I'm just going to label the areas of the sphere, what they are, and I might label them wrong probably, or I might label them right, but I guess they're close enough. So that's it for today's lecture, and I thank you very much for joining me and seeing what we are doing here in my class, and thank you. See you very soon. Good day.